financial advisors. So right now, what he's definitely doing is he's spent several years, 25-year career, that's quite a bit of experience, advising hundreds of families experiencing the nightmare paying for the care. And for care, the question always was how to make the money last. So when he's has a way to challenge the current behavior of consumers and financial advisors preparing for the potential high cost of aging, that's somebody that definitely cares to make a difference. Morris has also watched too many families and too many women and men not be fully prepared for retirement. All around me, I've seen that too. The financial industry has put this cost of care issue on total ignore mode. And only about 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 Americans embrace this model. That's the problem for American families in our country. Morris found a better way, a win-win solution that more Americans could feel good about embracing. And it's the whole new way to approach and solve this problem. The LCAP, which is Longevity Care Allocation Plan. And every person, every family deserves to know how the LCAP works. So Kerry Morris has made it his life's goal to ensure that those he helps can hold their head up high and know that no matter what curveballs retirement throws at them, they will definitely be prepared. And to me, that's a heartbeat of revelation to revolution. So screenshot this, I'll bring it up again, but right now we can't wait to introduce and have you meet Kerry Morris.
Well, thank you, Christine. Thank you for those kind words. Morning, Ray.
Kerry. I am so happy to have you on here today. Again, I got right here, folks, you got to get this book. And Christine just put a slide up where you can actually go to my website and under shop, and all of this is going to be up sometime first of next week. You'll be able to go in there and get this book. And Kerry, what I believe, let me look on the back here. Yes, it says, I'm getting old, Kerry. I can't see. It looks like it says $14.95, I believe.
Yeah. Or there's an ebook for $6. Yeah.
Yes.
Either
yes.
way.
And I'm glad you brought that up. So
yeah.
First of the week, folks, you'll be able to go onto the website and it'll have a direct link on there where you can go and get the ebook for what $6?
$5.95. Yeah. Okay, I always round up, right? $6. Yeah.
Right, yes. And folks, I am holding one of the very first books of this publication right here. This is a fantastic read. And if you, here's what we're going to do. If you email me, I will personally see to it that not only will you get the book at the show discount price, we will personally back here at Ocean Drive see that you get one of these. I believe, Brett, we've got 100 of these here at the office. And folks, you gotta go get this book. All right.
One thing I want to mention on this slide, I have oceandrivecapital.net. This weekend, this evening, I did that on purpose because we have several books that we're going to be promoting, and everybody that knows Ray and to get on this website, it's just going to be specifically for Kerry's book and for some of the other authors. So that's why I have that on there, Kerry. And we definitely, and then that in the website will go to your book publisher.
And also, Christine and Kerry already knows about this. You do too. I want to tell our audience today. One of the new features on the website is going to be entitled Trusted Advisors. And under that drop-down tab, you're going to be able to get access directly to Kerry, as well as myself and other people that are going to be on this show today that are in the financial services industry. Kerry we have some things, we have a lot in common. Kerry has become like I'm just going to say it, Kerry, you have become a very good friend to me in the time I've known you. And folks, some of you out there know I try to bring you the truth each and every week on Christine's show and other podcasts that have been a guest on. The truth is one of the things, and Kerry and I have talked about this, Christine. In the financial services industry, there's a lot of people out there, all they do, that they just care about making a commission off of you. That's all they care about. And the thing that I love about Kerry is we are also affiliated with another company that we both utilize for our clients, to help our clients. And that's how, in fact, that's how I met Kerry. And you're also going to be able to see the owner of that company and Kerry. They have a series on precious metals, why you should have them. And every couple of months, they'll come out with one of these, and they're only, 15, 20 minutes long. Fantastic information. And all of those segments, those are about to go up on the website, which will give you an added taste of what, beyond what you're going to get from Kerry here today. So, Kerry, I am so tickled to have you on here today. It means the world to me, and what the people on here and the hundreds that have registered for this, that will see this after the fact. I'm just so glad, and I'm very proud and very thankful, very grateful that you are now part of the network that I have put together, all in the benefit of helping people with the financial truth. So I'm going to shut up now. And
well, it's an honor, Ray. It's an honor.
I talk a lot, and we're always joking about that too. So
yeah, I give you a hard time, but no, it's an honor. Kudos to all the hard work you guys to bring this together. What a wealth of information. I mean, yeah, my head is spinning because I've been listening from the beginning. So yeah, it's a lot to think about and process, right?
Yes.
Thank God for video recording where we can stop it and go back and listen again and stop it and go back. That's what it takes. It really does.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to let you do your thing now.
We're excited. We're excited to hear and listen, so you can teach out.
So
we're gonna let you do your thing, and then after you get through, I'd like to come back on and ask you a couple of questions, if that would be okay, and then we'll go from there. So, Kerry Morris, take it away, my brother.
All right. Well, glad to be here and welcome everybody. Man, such a lot of interesting things being said so far today, and will continue to be. It's just a plethora of information. I just wanted to tell you right up front, I've got some good news for you. And it's not the good news, but it's good news. If you know what I mean about the good news. But anyways, it's good news, kind of like airbags, right? Airbags is good news. Think about people that have wrecks now that don't have airbag. If they didn't have an airbag, growing up, I know Ray, and I can say this about Ray. I don't know about Christine, but when we were growing up, nobody wore seat belts, right? We went on a trip laying up in the back deck and places like that, and so change happens, and things occur that there's still people today that don't want to wear a seat belt, right? Or that airbag. So it's good news, like guardrails, right? There was a time where there was no guardrails on roads, or children's car seats, right? Man, that's a lot of work putting kids in and out. And everybody wants to get out of them as fast as they can. But the thing is those car seats save lives, and so change occurs. And what happens is people are better for it if they embrace that change when it's for their good. So that's really the topic today. And longevity is really the change that has occurred. In a really wonderful book, talking about books, The Longevity Economy by a man named Joseph Coughlin. I really recommend that book. he talks about in there the shift that's happening in America for the percentage of Americans that are 65 and over is moving from around 15, 16% up into the 20s over the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And so that's a huge shift in our country. And it's going to be more and more people who age into this time of life and have some of the illnesses or some of the challenges of aging. So that's what we're going to get into today. I would be remiss before I get to the good news if I didn't break into a little reality, though. And I want to share some reality with a true story that I witnessed firsthand. Having sat in my conference room, as Christine mentioned, with over 700 families over a several year period who were at the point of having to pay for care, that's where I saw the car wrecks. That's where I saw what happened to families, what happened to relationships, what happened to adult children's marriages, and what was going on, what happened to the older person's marriages. And sometimes it wasn't even an older person, right? So sitting in that conference room, family after family after family, that's where I felt like a seatbelt needed to be created. Is there an airbag out there that we can put in these scenarios to help cushion the high cost of aging, as we've come to call it? And so I'll never forget, though, a Sunday afternoon when my mom called me. You're sitting on your couch Sunday afternoon. Mom usually texts me first, but I looked over, it was my mom calling, hadn't texted first or anything. And I answered the phone, not knowing what was going on. And she said, "Kerry, Jim has a gun and he's saying he's going to use it on Diane if she doesn't get off the toilet." And I'm like, what in the world? And so I'm trying to stay calm. I'm listening. My mom's trying to stay calm. And I was like, "Mom, you got to call the police. You have no option but just to call the police." Well, Jim and Diane were mom and dad's next door neighbors of 50 years. Okay. They were in their late 80s, early 90s at the time. And mom said, "Okay, that's what I'll do." And my brain is trying to catch up, like, a gun, like she doesn't get off the toilet. And so mom ended up calling the police. They came and actually took Jim to the hospital for a psych eval and then on to jail. Because what had happened is his wife had come home from another trip to rehab about 3 weeks before that. And Jim, not trying to spend any money on it, and I'll get into that in a second, he has trying to do all of the care himself, right? And so what finally broke him was she had picked up this bad habit in rehab where she would sit on the toilet for hours and wouldn't get off. And all these type of things manifest themselves in all kind of ways, right? But that was a thing that broke Jim that day. He ended up slapping her and pulled a gun and all that stuff. And he called my mom, thank God, right? He called my mom in that moment. And I was able to say, "Mom, call the police." And they got in there and they diffused the situation. So the thing is like, what about you? None of us know the place that these challenges can take us to, right? And I couldn't help but sitting there on the couch as this was going on that day and the following months. My mind kept going back over and over again to about 10 years before when they had sat in my office and we had discussed some things they could do. Because see, Jim had it all figured out, right? In his own mind, it wasn't going to happen to them. And the way he had he had about $1 million back then. By the time this happened, he was down to about 600,000. And so he was of a mindset that he couldn't get into the 600 to bring in some caregiving because his income would go down because he was dependent on dividends. See how the tail's wagging the dog and all these things happen, right? And so the thing is that it can happen to anybody at any time, really, when it comes to aging. And so that was a tipping point after all this other that I knew, we had to get the book done. We had to get this message out. And so that Jim ended up spending the money he was trying to prevent from spending because he didn't prepare ahead of time. He didn't allocate some dollars appropriately years before when given a chance. He passed that boat up. He ended up spending a lot, really double, because she ended up going to assisted living and he couldn't come back to the house until she was gone. And then he ended up coming to assisted living too. So and now they're in separate assisted livings. Okay. So he ended up spending double. So it's a classic story that illustrates what I saw over and over and over again happening to families who had not prepared. Excuse me. So that's Jim and Diane, and that's really why I wrote the book. Was to get that message out there. And give me 1 second. I went to share my screen. It's not giving me my choice of the two monitors like it usually does. I guess I'll just go right here. Oh, I see what's going on. So that's why I wrote the book, was because I saw Wall Street just ignoring this, retirement plans, all the work that goes on, just ignoring this devastating problem that exists in most people's retirement. Okay. So what happens when you bring this topic up is people start automatically processing things, right? Like excuse wise. And so I like to often say, okay, what does the science say? Whether what you have in front of you here is 3 boxes, and each box has 100 little boxes in it. And inside of each of those boxes, there's red boxes represent how many times that a family, hold on. Oh, sorry. Each of those boxes represents how many times a family could experience each of those perils. And so you see with home fires, 3 out of 100. You would never think about not having insurance for your home. Car accidents, 18 out of 100. You would never think about not having some type of insurance coverage for that, right? But needing care, 70 out of 100. I mean, if you had those kind of odds in Vegas, you would go and buy tons of lottery tickets, right? I mean, that's the number. 70% of us are going to need some type of care. And I'm not here today to talk about traditional long-term care insurance. So I encourage you to stay open and stay tuned. And I'm going to unpack some of this for you of what's really going on in people's portfolios out there, how their portfolio is so unprepared for the high cost of aging. This is Julia. When I met Julia, she had cared for her husband for 9 years. He had been passed away for 6. And she was living in assisted living with more outgo than income. You know, they thought they had everything planned out. And the advisors who helped them accumulate that wealth, I'm sure did a good job, but they had not prepared for the high cost of aging. When I met her, they had gone from 700,000 down to 70,000. I was called in to rescue, see if I could salvage some quality of life for her, unlock a little known VA pension. And apparently, she had experienced exactly why this is why we call that the ticking time bomb inside your portfolio. See, what happens is when families experience care, they have to pay for care out of their portfolios. It acts just like market losses. So think about that for a second. Everybody's so focused on the market going down, which they should be. They're focused on taxes, which they should be. Focused on inflation, which they should be. But what happens is there's a possible ticking time bomb there that is you have a 70% chance of having to deal with that can come do away with all the financial planning that has gone in, all the talk about fees and all the talk about this allocation, that allocation, all the talking heads on TV every day, all the chatter. All right. Because see, what happens is when you're working, you're adding dollars to those accounts. Okay. You're adding those in up markets, you're adding those in down markets. Think about that. So you never actually experience the market how it really is when you're working. You're adding money, your company's adding money. Let that soak in for a second. So the order of returns doesn't matter. But I'm going to show you in a second, when you're retired, though, you're subtracting dollars, right? You need your income. You're subtracting dollars in up markets. You're subtracting dollars in down markets. Okay. You live or die by those returns, the order of those returns then. That's called sequence of return risk. We call it Wall Street's dirty little secret. All right. Because Wall Street doesn't care about you preparing for longevity. They really don't. In too many advisors will say, oh, you have enough. And we'll get into that in some of those things they say. But I'm going to give you a quick example. So we're going to take a couple that they're about to retire. They're going to take 5% income out of this. They've saved $648,000. One family's the Hatfields, one family's the McCoys. Okay, Hatfields and the McCoys. Same returns, opposite order. What do you mean, Kerry? Well, I mean, they're both going to average 8% return, right? Everybody focuses on the average. Same returns, opposite order. What that means is that in this 25-year period, you're going to see they have the same returns. They're just flipped on one family versus the other. So at age 90, the McCoys have $2.6 million. That's the American dream, right? I mean, go from 648,000 to 2.6 plus bring out all that income. That's amazing. Well, I'm going to show you why that happened. So when they retired, they started out with, you see the top 3 years there, 29, 18, and 25%, 3 big years. They ended with 3 down years. Okay. The Hatfields, though, had just the opposite, and they ran out of money at age 82. Well, how does that happen? Well, they started with 3 down years and ended with 3 up years. So this is what's going on in the math of retirees, retirement accounts all over the place. So don't forget, care costs acts like market losses, right? So I just wanted to give you a brief piece of this today so you could start thinking about how money acts differently in retirement. Sequence of return risk can be caused by market losses or out-of-pocket care costs. Okay, so that's exactly what happened to Julia and her husband. And the good news is I was able to unlock about $1,000 from the VA to help them pay for care. Okay. So your mind might be saying, well, wait a minute, doesn't Medicare pay for this? Well, Medicare doesn't care about custodial care. Medicare is going to go take you to the doctor. They're going to deal with the hospital. They're going to deal with the rehab. That's restorative care, right? And basically, there's a set of rules about it. But basically, once a person levels off and stops getting better, Medicare stops. So a family's called into the discharge planner's office. She says, hey, you know, your loved one stopped getting better. Medicare is not going to pay anymore. But you know what? They really can't go home and live alone. What are you going to do? Here's a list of home health care agencies. And they go home and they start calling them and they get sticker shocked. And then they just freeze. Start trying to create all kinds of workarounds. And that's when they used to get referred to us to come in and sort out how can we make the money last as long as possible. So Medicare's never paid for home health, assisted living, nursing home from a custodial standpoint. All right. All right. So how long do you plan on? These are the three questions test. So one is Medicare. That's off the table. We know the science says that we have a 70% chance of having to deal with this. This is the reality check before the good news, right? How long do you plan on staying healthy during retirement? Do you feel you have any control over staying healthy in retirement, or is it more of a hereditary thing? None of us want to feel like we don't have control, right? So we want to tell ourselves that we do. But there's examples all around you, all the time, probably, of things that came out of left field at people. Dementias that popped up to the person who was walking a mile a day and eating really well, right? And those might be some of the steps that you're taking in order to stay healthy. And that is going to help your quality of life. That's going to definitely help in all kinds of ways. But it could also cause you to stay living longer with a loss of function, which our whole goal is to keep quality of life as high as possible. That's what the whole goal of all this is. Because you have a mission, you have a purpose, you have things that you've been called to do, and you want to keep doing that as long as you possibly can. So the answer is not to live in denial or shy away from it. The answer is to accept the fact that, okay, a lot of this stuff I can't control, but just like market laws or taxes or inflation, I need to prepare, right? Because your advisor may be doing the best they can with what they know, which is usually accumulation or maybe some retirement income planning, but they're not the ones stuck having to pay for this later. And so as an advisor in the financial community myself, all due respect to my colleagues, this is an issue that they tend to ignore. We want to push it to the side. All right. And that's why the title of the book, the subtitle is The Defect in Your Portfolio That Everyone Wants to Ignore. So the reason it's called When Retirement Goes Bad, Life Sucks is because it does. Like, I've seen it. I witnessed it. It's like that car wreck, right? But if you can have some airbags and all this, then it becomes a survivable incident. Not only that, but you can thrive through it, really, because this is a family affair. We'll get to that in a second. So the advisor community has kind of a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, let me just get a quote, or what about this? But the solution set out there is so diverse and complex that it really takes a specialist. It really takes somebody trained in longevity planning who really knows the marketplace, because everybody has a different health level, right? You might say, well, I can't do any of this because I'm not healthy. Yeah, there's some leverage out there for that person. People have different levels of assets in their nest egg, right? You got the $200,000 level, $100,000 or $200,000. You got the $400,000 or $500,000 level. You got the $8-9 million level. You got 1.5, 2 million, and on up from there, right? See, this issue, it doesn't care about your economic status. It's no respecter of persons when it comes to that, right? The high cost of aging, the issue of aging and longevity goes across all economic sectors. So there needs to be a way that each of those sectors can plan and not get caught off guard. Now, for years and years and years, people heard and knew of this thing called traditional long-term care insurance, right? We watched that industry implode. We watched it go from 100+ companies to a handful of companies over the last 15 years. And that's because of a lot of reasons that I won't get into today, but in traditional long-term care insurance is not bad, not at all. That's not what I'm here to say. And if you have it right now, kudos to you, because some coverage is better than no coverage. But you see the three things there that if we can avoid those and make it better and do it in a smarter way, then that would be great, because nobody likes use it or lose it. Just like your home and auto, they don't write you a big check at the end of your life if your house never burns down, right? Price never locked in. Nobody likes that, right? That's kind of scary. And then only the healthiest can get it. So we're going to talk about an alternative to that while respecting it. But first, we got to say, okay, what is the risk? What are we talking about here? So how much will care be in today's dollars and maybe 15 years from now? So this is called the Genworth Cost of Care Calculator. And I live in Nashville, like Christine said. So that's where we're going to look at today. We're going to take a look at in today's dollars per year annually. And also we'll jump 15 years down the road. Okay. And Ray's going to say, hey, that's probably not inflated enough, but this is what we're looking at today as an example, right, Ray? So what I have here for you at the bottom of the calculator is 3 categories. This is home health aid. So that means non-medical home care that comes in the house, not the few visits of occupational therapy or PT that Medicare is going to pay for every once in a while when a doctor says to, but I'm talking about the ongoing day-to-day assistance with the activities of daily living, supervision for a cognitively impaired person, all those things. This is 44 hours a week. Okay. So if you picture a family aging into this scenario and a caregiver's there 8 hours during the day, they make it through the nights on their own, they're back in the morning, and then 4 hours on the weekend. Maybe the family's taken over the weekend, right? But this is where the drain starts. But reality is a lot of you on this today, this webinar today, you don't need care now, right? You need care down the road potentially. And I hope you don't. But if you do, 44 hours a week in 15 years is going to be somewhere around $118,000. Let's look at assisted living. Today, right at 50 grand, 15 years from now, 100 grand a year, 100 grand a year. That's why we call it the ticking time bomb. Do you think that's because this is on and on and on, right? At least the market traditionally has kind of recovered. We'll going to talk about that too. And then nursing home right at 95,000 now, 200 grand a year in 15 years. Wow. So that's the risk. All right. So the science says we have a 70% chance or so. Our brain says, no, I'm not, it ain't happening to me. Right. And then you've got Medicare's not going to pay for it. There's really not a whole lot we can do to control how we age. I wish there was. We can try, we can do word puzzles, we can do all those things. But these chronic illnesses of longevity, remember back to the population shift, most of it's out of our control. Okay. So let's break down, let's go beneath the surface and look what happens economically with what we call the longevity tax. Okay. So when you have to pay for care with fully taxable dollars, which is where most Americans are today, because since 1980, this little thing called the 401k and IRAs were created, right? So we're about 40 years into that. And so most money has been saved pre-tax. You know, I kind of call it an experiment, but that was a huge shift in America, because now all of a sudden retirement, the burden of the risk for retirement income shifted from the company they were working for with a pension plan over to the individual worker. Okay. So, you know, those calculators inside your 401k plan, it says, hey, you're going to get this. That's just an actuarial calculation. It means nothing of what you'll actually get, because you don't know what's going to happen in the marketplace 10 years before or when you retire, just like I showed you earlier. So having to pay for care with fully taxable dollars becomes a systemic problem of having to pull that money out when you're older. Okay. So out of an IRA, let's give an example here. So let's say the cost of care is $88,000. You just saw that that's not extreme. Okay. For us in a few years down the road, you have to actually withdraw. If you're 20% tax bracket, you have to actually withdraw 110. So your account value actually goes down 110,000, right? That's why we call it the IRS's dirty little secret, right? The double nightmare is you combine Wall Street's dirty little secret with the longevity tax, Here's what that looks like. So here's $130,500. We have a market drop of 15%. That leaves us with 110.5. We've got our 88,000 of care costs. But what? We have to pay the IRS as well, right? So that's where really that one cost of care of 88,000 costs us 130 grand, because that money will never recover. That's just paid to a caregiving company. So that's the burden on the portfolio that it can't handle, it can't stand. Right? It's just gone. All right. So a couple more things here. Care cost acts upon a portfolio like additional market losses. I saw it over and over again. And what happens is the defect's not exposed until you can't do anything about it, right? Then you have to just suffer through it. And that's what I want to see you not have to do. So here, you be the judge, right? These numbers are properly calculated and they're not going to lie because they are properly calculated. But you see for yourself, okay? Here's a 3-year scenario starting with $1 million. We're going to have a 10% market drop the first year, right? Then we're going to pull out 40,000 of income. Okay. Then we're going to have the care cost of 88,000. And then don't forget the taxes got to be paid, right? 30 grand in taxes. So it's a total drawdown of $250,000. And we're sitting at the end of year 1 at 742. So let's go to year 2, to another 10% market down. And then year 3, it's good news. We're going to go up, right? So here's a 10% market down again, 40,000 of income, care costs coming out, taxes coming out. And all of a sudden you're down to 509,800, 509,800. The last year, the market's up. I mean, our $500,000 million is cut in half already to $500,000. Now the market's up 15%. We have our same things coming out that year, $428,000 in only 3 years. And also, by the way, let me just take a second and debunk this idea of, oh, well, the average claim is 3 years, 3.5 years. Well, that really was developed out of traditional long-term care insurance claims, which for one thing, since they had limited benefit periods, people held and paid out of pocket and really pulled the trigger on those at the last minute. It's just skewed data. Many people out there have years and years of where they need assistance in the home, assisted living, things like that. So, the family caregiving that's going on out there, which is wonderful. We'll talk about that. Families are more spread out. It's a lot more than 3 years. But in 3 years, you can see this $1 million is down to 420. That's unrecoverable. All right. So what if it was both spouses at the same time? Excuse me. Or what if year 1 in my example was 2020 and year 3 was this year? So far the average investor is down 15 to 30%, and I'm being kind. I know Ray's probably shifted in his seat like, oh, they're more than that. I'm being kind, right? Just because a lot of people may be holding different conservative things. So I wanted to bring this up today. This is you can find this, you just search for Guggenheim Dow Jones historical trend chart, but you don't have to see the little details. Just look at the columns on here. And what this is 125 years of the Dow Jones. Okay. And it's what we call secular bulls and bears. So Wall Street wants to keep you focused on what happened yesterday or what they think is going to happen tomorrow, these little market cycles. Like just little happen within a year or 2 period. They want to keep you focused on that. But what's going to impact your life and change your life is what we call secular bulls and bears. And it's as simple as this. When you look at this chart, don't worry about, the time frames or anything. First, initially, just know that the gray areas are times when the market went up over a period of years, and the burgundy areas are times when it was flat. So literally, for example, that burgundy area second from the left there, that's 25 years from 1929 up to 1954. And I blew this up for you here a little bit too. So you see on the far right, that's this burgundy area on the far right. That's the year 2000. You had the tech boom and everything before that. Okay, the boom of the 80s, the baby boomers were coming in their productive years, and boom, it was a really progressive year and productive time for our country, not year, but years. And then, as we know what happened in 2001 and 02, as Ray mentioned in his earlier opening comments, he talked about the crash there in 08, 09. And a lot of people actually didn't break even until 2013. It was 13 years of flat. So what happens if that's what's going on when you get to that point in life where you're 75, 80, 85, 90 years old, and all of a sudden you have a loss of function? And let me tell you, when that happens, I saw it with hundreds of families. That loss of function demands resources be used. Resources are human, resources are financial. Okay. And I think, as you heard our other speakers, the government's not going to bail you out. Okay. And so you see that gray area on the far right there. All right. That's what sets from 2010 till the end of last year. All right. And so it looks like to me, and everything you're hearing today, it makes sense to me that, like, how much farther can that gray go before we shift into another secular bear? That's the point. Okay. So let's review and then we'll wrap up. So let's get it all on the table at once here. So you got market losses, sequence of return risk going on, longevity tax, having to pay tax on pulling the money out of tax deferred dollars. So now every dollar that you have to pay for care is actually $1.20 if you're in that tax bracket, or more, $1.35, $1.39, right? And then, of course, the cost of care itself. I haven't even talked about the inflation rate of that. So what in the world do you do about this? You know, that's how a $3 million portfolio can go down significantly over time, or $1 million, or 500,000, you know, and that's the thing. And so, yeah. What you see here is it's just stressful stress. Now everybody's in like crisis mode, right? If they're not prepared for this, if they don't have another place that they can pull from or turn on an extra stream of dollars, you know, and most advisors just aren't aware how bad it can get and how it can wipe them out. They just process the distribution forms and hope the client doesn't get angry. That's what they're doing, you know, and so it can change lives so significantly. So it really is, there's no excuse for this not being handled. And that's part of our mission at Honor Shield, is to try to take this message to the industry to say, hey, you have a fiduciary responsibility. You need to do something about this. And in the meantime, I'm going to share with you in a second a way that we feel like it can be addressed win-win. So it can affect up to 70% of retirees. That means that's how many folks are just, their portfolios are completely naked out there, right? Does it really make sense to risk your retirement security and family well-being? And you say, well, Kerry, that depends on what it is I have to do to not risk it. But ignoring it is not going to change anything. It's just going to put you in crisis mode. It's just hopium, right? Because what you want is a scenario where you have another payor in the situation, or you've gotten some leverage on some dollars. That's what we're going to talk about next. And so that way, in my scenario here, you can see that instead of 428,000, this person would have 772. Well, another year or two up after the year 4 and 5, that portfolio is possibly recoverable, but at least it has a good chance of recovering if it's not having to bear the burden of all that care cost at once. All right, which creates more taxes. So that's really why we created longevity care allocation planning. Because when I went looking for a solution, I wanted to find something that meets a couple of different criteria and solves kind of the problem I saw people resisting so much about. I knew there had to be a better way to prepare my clients from the high cost of aging and the threat of wiping out their total security. You know, that's the good news, is that there is. So what I wanted was a win-win. I wanted to know that, okay, the portfolio has some protection. If we do need care, we have to pay for it. But what if we don't? What if we're part of the 30%? Well, I wanted something that if no care was needed, then money would go to the heirs. Okay. That's a win-win to me. That's the scenario I saw happening. My 97-year-old grandmother, she was working in her nursing home the day before she passed. I'm working in her nursing home. What? Scratch that. She was working in her greenhouse. She was working in her greenhouse the day before she passed. So here's what this kind of looks like. Longevity care allocation planning, instead of having a typical diversified quote portfolio that just is subject to the high cost of aging and doing nothing, you have that potential disaster. What you can do is slice off an allocated piece of that portfolio, which is different for everybody, how much that should be. Is it taxable, non-taxable? And now there's a solution that provides dollars if you need care that are multiplied. So maybe you allocate $1 to it, but for care, it's going to pay out 3 tax-free, right? That's a slogan, 3 tax-free. That's what I call paying for care at a discount. That's just one example of the type of products that old insurance companies have been offering for several years, but nobody knows about it. And some of them like 20, 30 years, right? But nobody knows about it because the advising community hasn't talked about it. It's getting a little more press in the last 4 or 5 years. It's called asset-based long-term care, not traditional long-term care insurance, which is not bad, but asset-based gives you these 2 win-win things, okay? You can look it up, asset-based long-term care, but just know that case design can be complex if you're really going to find the best bang for the buck. So it's not just, oh, get a quote. This one company does, no, there's a handful of companies that deserve to be looked at. Okay. So here's the bottom line. This is what this is all about right here. You can see this dad right here. He wants to stay in control. He wants to maintain his lifestyle as long as possible, but being prideful and saying, oh, it's never going to happen to me is not the best way to do that, right? She's over here thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to take care of him. What's that going to do to me? Do you know we lose about 30% of our spousal caregivers before the person they're caring for because of the burden on them? And this is what I mean when I told the story of Jim and Diane, when I talked about him having to spend twice the money he could have had to spend if they were more prepared because they would have embraced care earlier and aged better. Well, preparing earlier also means taking care of these spouses who, are going to honor their other spouse because they love them. They're going to honor them, take care of them, lay down their life. Remember when I talked about all resources are finite and care demands resources be used? Well, humans are a resource. These adult children here are resources, Is the burden supposed to fall on them? Well, everybody can share in it, right? But it's when it all falls on just the people, there's no professional help coming in. That's where things really start to happen and become super destructive. Or a person can live the rest of their life by knowing they've taken a little sliver. It's just kind of that same mentality of, hey, honey, I've set this aside here for take care of us when we're older. Now we can go spend more of the rest of what we have. Now we can go invest more aggressively and so forth and so on. And so you can live knowing you're prepared. You can live knowing that the nest egg's protected for that next generation if that's your goal and that's your desire. And so we last thing on this is we used to always say when you're out of money, you're out of options, right? And nobody likes that feeling. Okay. So questions you probably still have. Hey, what about you? Will defective portfolio syndrome derail your goals and dreams in retirement? It doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. You can always have a plan. The path to get there for the person who has 50 to 100 to 250 to 300 or 400,000 looks one way. The path to get there for the person that has 500,000, 750 to $1 million plus, it may be another way, right? But either way, you got the high cost of aging, the ticking time bombs. Are you prepared for that? So the last thing I'll leave you with is what to do next. And I say, it's good to look into eliminating defective portfolio syndrome. That's what we call it. We call it a syndrome because it's several of these things coming in together. And I believe the best way to do that is through a longevity care allocation plan because of all the things I've mentioned. So that's where I'll leave it today, and invite you guys back in, Ray and Christine, and we can unpack this. I don't know if you want.
Excellent, excellent. I sure do appreciate all that you've done, Kerry. In fact, I do have, this is incredible information, knowing that, and I did find your other slide that it has all your information. I want everybody to please take a screenshot on this. I know when I introduce you, you go, well, where's my information? So I bet you were thinking about it. This is Honor Shield. This is exactly what Kerry was talking about. There's his phone number. You can reach him, and his website. So screenshot this so you have that in your portfolio to talk with this. And what I love is each one of our speakers today, they fill a void, and together everybody fits the full project to be safe and protected. That's the revelation to revolution. So we sure appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Ray and you too, because he has several questions. I'm going to bow out a little bit, and I will leave it up to you guys.
Okay, Kerry, fantastic job, my friend. And the PowerPoint that you shared with us, fantastic. I know that took a lot of work to put together, but just like everything that you do, you're very good at it. You know this stuff like the back of your hand.
You're too
And,
kind, Ray.
well, it's the truth.
I have lived it. I have lived it so many years, so it does come out of me pretty strong sometimes.
So again, what we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I started off earlier doing a little history on the Federal Reserve and the politics of money, which is something that I specialize in. And beyond what else I do. And then we had Brett come on that just expounded on the politics of money and what's really going on. And then now, Kerry, you've been so kind to come on here and share what you bring to the table. So hopefully the people that are on this today, and the hundreds that are going to be watching this after the fact, I want them to see, hopefully by now they're seeing a pattern emerge here. All of this is interconnected. And Kerry and I have talked about this often. And one of the things that we haven't really touched on yet is part of your strategy within the realm of what you do for people, same with me, is we teach people they got to put some of this stuff in their portfolio. Okay.
Yeah, that doodle you played in the opening, very opening kind of little commercial almost, you know, I saw that doodle a decade ago. Like I know where that came from, right?
Yes. But it makes a lot of sense, you know. So
yeah,
I cannot harp enough on, and I know you tell people this too. I do it a little differently, mainly because I'm getting older, maybe getting a little more meaner. Okay. But it's like you know, you got to pay attention to this stuff. And as we get older, you know, I'm 65 now. You know that my mother is in care. She's been there for a year and a half now. Prior to that, the 2 years prior to that, she lived with me and Becky, and that was great. And it was very, very, very hard for me to let go of some of that. And I had doctors, I had other people say, Ray, you know, it's time for her to go into the home. And then I will never forget, mom was having a very lucid day. She's 91 now, pushing 92. And this was just a few years ago. The rate when she started to go off the edge, so to speak, it happened very quickly. My mother was amazing. She actually worked, Kerry, until she was 78. And then even when she finally gave it up, there were other companies, competitors within the company she was with. They started calling her back, wanting her to come in and do stuff on a part-time basis. And she did that for a little while until she was 80. And I remember the hardest thing to ever see happen to her is at age 86. She finally handed me her car keys one day.
Yeah.
But
She's a smart lady.
yes, she was. And I learned a lot from her. And I hate to see her where she's at now, but she's, for all intents purposes, she's happy. She's cared very well for. Because of what I helped her with that you alluded to in your presentation, I was able to help her to offset some of what she didn't have. And then I'm still making her some money in the background, which is great. And oh boy, when she reminds me of that every time I talk to her. How much money did you make me this month?
Yeah, right.
Still
No,
does that at
no
90.
pressure, Ray.
Every single, how much money did you put in my account this month?
Yeah.
So surprisingly, she still doesn't miss a beat in that department.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I've seen it happen so many different ways, Ray. Like I would see couples come in and where they had just kind of been in that survival mode as function was decreasing, they're living together. I can't tell you how many times I saw one had decreased physically and one had decreased cognitively. So collectively, they still kind of function through the day, like one would serve as one would be the mind. And the minute that one of those took that next step down, it just threw the whole apple cart off. And you mentioned kind of like, you didn't use the word denial, or kind of being behind the curve a little bit, maybe earlier. We noticed a trend on that. It seemed like the older person a lot of times was maybe, a good 12 months behind really where they were, and the kids were at least 6 months. And so the thing we're trying to get across to everybody is just everybody can have a plan, and it's just worth stopping to think about it and pursue that. The reason why you don't see me throwing out specifics today on those solutions is because there's categories of scenario with health and wealth, with money, and so
everybody's different.
yeah. And so it takes that 30-minute conversation to assess a situation and then know which quadrant to drill down on. So that's the bottom line. Yeah. And I call that a feasibility study.
Yes.
So we just study them in what's feasible. But
folks, I want you to know that within the realm of what I do with my clients, I am in the process. Kerry already knows this, obviously, but just for the listeners on here today, everybody that you have heard or going to hear today, this is part of that network that I have put together over the last few years. And as my clients are starting to enter retirement or get close to that age, I am fully recommending that they, I'm putting them in contact. We've had a couple of those calls, 3-way calls, Kerry, and is to get those people over to you. Because me, I'm one of those guys. I get into the weeds a lot, as you very well know. And
somebody has to, Ray.
oh yeah, then you got that, and then you got the ODD and the ACD, and pick up a 3-letter acronym. It's like Tony Hubbard, who's going to be on here later. He always says, this thing right here, it's my blessing and it's also my curse. So, I'm sure Christine's laughing her butt off right now hearing that. She will. And, but yeah, we got to have a plan. And whether
I
you're,
did hear that. Yes.
yes. So whether you get to the point to where you're taking care of your parents, a parent, whatever it may be, and let's face it, some of the younger people out there today, they're not getting this, and it's because of the indoctrination.
Yeah. I want to jump in on that for a second, real quick,
Please.
because it's one thing I didn't mention. It's kind of another segment. It kind of deserves its own conversation. But back to the 401k era, right? And the American worker taking that risk on themselves since 1980-ish, roughly. It's taken until the last few years that finally people are realizing that that's not doing it for income, and their future is just not secure that way. And so finally we're starting to see rules passed to be able to put some guaranteed income building type things inside of 401ks. We believe, this is just a macro thing really for the conference today, I wanted to make sure I mentioned this. We believe that the day will come where people will be able to trickle money in over several years into their retirement plan. I mean, this is down the road, but I just wanted to plant that seed that retirement plan, that 401k needs to have those two components, something that's growing towards guaranteed income. And that vehicle is provided by an insurance company that's a type of annuity that can still be linked to the market. That's really the best vehicle for that. And then also the asset-based long-term care can be a part of that, where it's a trickle in over time. So, we hope that that's where our country can head to, so that we can prepare the population for this longevity that our science has created and so forth.
Well, I just want to let everybody know, this is why Kerry is on here today. I have gone through what he does with a fine-tooth comb. There is nobody better, Kerry, than when it comes to the retirement, what you have spent so long putting together. It works, and it is as bulletproof as I have found out there yet. So folks,
Appreciate it.
if you're in that mode, if you're nearing that mode, even if you're preparing for that mode, get a hold of Kerry, reach out to Kerry and have a conversation with him, and he can help you. And he's going to always tell you the truth. So that being said, my friend, we're coming up on the next hour. Kerry,
Yes, I am so excited, Kerry. I'm glad I got to learn about this, because I know so many people that definitely can use your services. Thank you again, Ray, for that.
Yeah. Well, it's been an honor, you guys, and enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. And yeah, go USA.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Let's take this country back. We need a revolution.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you
There
so
you go.
much.
All
Now,
right.
what I'm excited about, because what we're going to do now, we're going to introduce our forensic CPA. I'm so excited to do that. There is so much that you're going to learn exactly about what to do and what you can't